Hey Sherry, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Thanks.
I'm good. How are you?
This is a test. See how the microphone's doing.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get all this stuff together. How you doing, Sherry?
Doing good.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right. I keep trying different ways to connect, and someday I'll get it right. You never know. So it's like the what 50th day in a row where it's sunny and 100.
Yes.
It's unreal. I read somewhere, and I don't know exactly where they were talking about, but somewhere in the US, July was the hottest in recorded history ever. And I believe it. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hey, how are you, Kimberly? Do you go by Kimberly or Kim?
Either one. Most people just call me Kim.
Okay. There's Grant. My main man, Grant.
Hey Dennis, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. As
You still hanging around being 6'9"?
far as I know.
All right. I like it.
Yeah. If I grow anymore, I'm gonna be upset.
Well, when I was a kid playing basketball, I was like 11 years old, and I went to the sporting goods store to buy tennis shoes for basketball. And the guy looked at me and goes, "Would you like oars with those canoes?" I was so pissed. I was like, "No!"
That's
But
funny.
at the time, I was only 5'10", but my feet were the same size they are now. And I'm 6 foot, almost 6'3", 6'4". I don't know. The older I get, the less tall I am.
Yeah, that's the same thing with my dad. He was 6'4", and now he's 6'3.5" or so. And
Yeah.
the other way, my sister's 6'4". So
What? You have
Yeah.
a sister that's 6'4"? Holy shit.
yeah. And my mom's 5'10", so we just have a tall ass family.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's a thing. All
Yeah.
right. Can your 6'4" sister dunk a basketball?
She probably couldn't even make a layup, honestly.
Oh no.
She
Okay. Can
has
you
no
dunk?
eye coordination. She's like a swimmer and then did some running for a little bit, but no eye-hand coordination whatsoever.
We'll have to throw her a lob and she can just go up and get it and throw it down.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. How about you, Grant? Can you dunk?
On a good day.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I used to be able to a long, long time ago. I don't even think I could touch the rim now. Of course, I don't even try. I don't want to hurt myself, Hey, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right. Welcome to the 54th day in a row of over 100 degrees and 100% humidity. I'm assuming that's happening where you are too. Here in Pink Hill, my horses, they basically just hang out under a tree all day. And then at the end of the day, they go back in their barn. That's their, and where they hang out under the tree, there's no grass at all. And they just sit and look at each other. It's really wild. They're brother and sister, but for some reason, they adapted a routine that is making the grass get really long in the field. So I do attempt to cut the grass every once in a while in the field, but let's just say I don't have the proper equipment and it takes a really long time. I mean, I don't know how people do it. I guess you have to have a tractor with whatever that thing is you drag behind. I forget what it's called, but anyway, that's probably what I need. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming, and I do want to remind everybody, if you are interested in going live for October 4th, even if you think you might or you might not, go ahead and tell Jack Nail so he can. What I really want to do, even though I think the live's important, I want to get your logo in their ad budget. I want it to be. So make sure you send a link to your website and a logo to Jack so that we get the benefit of the promotion, even if you ultimately decide not to go live. That's okay. It's no big deal. But they are going to be spending money on advertising, and I want to try to benefit from that as much as possible. I have no control over where they're advertising. My understanding is they're going to really emphasize Wake County because they're one of their primary goals is to help the Raleigh farmers market, which is, I guess, in Wake County. And so they're emailing to thousands of people who've been to their farmers markets all across the state, and they're running ad campaigns somewhere to promote this event. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Hey,
Okay,
Dennis, one
Go
thing.
ahead.
Craig and John have got a show on Pop Shop today at 1:00. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If anybody wanted to see what those guys have got going on, it'd be a good time to do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll try to get on that. And these guys, I mentioned it in the introductions, but they really are pioneers in a lot of ways. They were the first guys to be doing this. And I think they've been doing it for maybe 2 or 3 years. I'm not even 100% sure, but they've been doing it for a while. And if you have the opportunity to watch, John is the older guy, the father, and Craig is the son, and Craig is the host of the show. And it is really good. It's fast paced. He's very personable. And you can also see kind of technique wise what he's doing, how he positions his laptop or iPad so that he can see the comments and the things people are saying. He's kind of got a little setup there, and we may ask him at some point to share that, but they know what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. And so I encourage everybody to take a look if you can. Thanks, Kai. Appreciate it.
Can someone tell me really quick how to get to that? Is this on the YouTube channel? Is that what we're?
No, you download the Pop Shop Live app.
Okay.
Or you can do it on your computer. It's not an app, it's just a website, but the app is really the place to do it.
Got
You
it.
get a much better sense of how it all works and that kind of thing. And you also, what you can do once you download it, you can mark certain performers, to be your favorite so that they let you know. So you can mark them. Oh, here comes John now. You can mark, Cherry Orchard Foods as one of your favorites. I also recommend Ashley Nolan. of Copper Ashes, who's from this class also,
Okay.
who, just to give you an idea, she sells jewelry and crystals and stuff that she makes. And when she first started in this class, she was doing really well. But she had a lot of different sales channels. She had Instagram, she had her Facebook, she had her website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She has now completely shut everything down except Pop Shop Live. That's all she does.
Wow.
And you know, a little known thing is if you get 1,000 people to sign up for your show, Pop Shop will give you $10,000. So she got the $10,000. And she told me the other day, I just asked her how it's going, and she said it's just fantastic. And she has found her product market fit that we talk about all the time. She found her tribe on Pop Shop Live for what it is she's selling. I'm not saying that all of you will have the same outcome, because you won't. You're not necessarily selling, you know, crystals, hopefully. I do have to say one thing that she sells that just, it blows me away. She sells rocking chairs for her crystals. They're little tiny rocking chairs, and she cannot keep them in stock. And I think they're like $25 each. It's insane. So the last time I talked to her, she was at something like $15,000 a month in revenue, operating out of her house in Grimesland, which she bought her house and her car as she graduated from ECU undergraduate, strictly from her Copper Ashes business. So it's a great story, and she's more than willing to talk to anybody if you want to reach out to her. You know, something to know. All right, so much for all that, and now we're going to finish up on about your customers. So let's do that. I'm hoping that everything will work today. I assume everyone can hear me, unlike yesterday.
All good.
Okay. Can you see this okay, Con?
Yes, sir. Everything's great.
Is it full screen?
About 60%, 70%. There you go. Full screen.
Great. I can't, it's only a third of the screen on my computer. It's really crazy. So anyway, this part we're going to start with today is about how to ask effective questions related to this customer journey.
So you've got some questions, but let's learn a little bit more about how these interviews, how to think about and structure the interviews. I'm going to have a couple helpers come up and do a little role playing here with this. And some applause for our volunteers, please. So what we're going to do here is do a little bit of role playing around these interviews. Beck, you're going to be asking the questions, right? Hannah, you're going to be playing the role of a potential customer, potential prospect. So we understand our roles here. I'll let them do kind of the interview here, and then I'll say time out. And what I'll do is I'll break in and kind of do the color commentary on what I'm observing. And then I'll say time in, and then we'll kind of go back into role playing. So we've got a couple of trained improv artists here, so I think we'll be good. All right, so time in.
So don't you think that prefab homes would be a great way to go on this land?
I don't know if I know enough about what a prefab home is, but maybe.
Well, but wouldn't it be great if like your house came more complete than if you had to find all the pieces yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds nice.
All right, let's do time out here. So on those last two questions, really good leading questions. So the challenge here is, so Hannah was sort of following along, and if you have a reality distortion field, which is really like you're bought in on the fact that this is a problem, I heard Hannah being nice, which is like, oh yeah, that's kind of an issue maybe. And it's super easy for Beck to think, oh, I'm onto something. Finally, I'm talking to somebody who needs what I'm selling. Confirmation. Off we go. And this is the danger in doing these really biased interview tactics, is that it's super easy for you to hear, yeah, that sounds reasonable, with, oh, strong signal, we are on to something now. So that's the danger. All right, so now let's shift gears a little bit, and now we'll role play a little bit of a different style, which is much more of an open kind of story-provoking, this place where we're not able to confuse ourselves with some signal with positive signal. So time in.
So tell me more about the vision. Like, what do you think it'll be like?
My future house.
Your future house on land with the garden.
Well, I always had a dream to have like friends or family nearby, so maybe sharing land or having different plots with kind of like more of community style, so not totally alone, but we could share like a garden or something. I'm really into simplicity, and so I just picture it very peaceful and simple.
That's so cool. I have a really similar dream. I love the idea of living with family and friends nearby. But do you know who would be there, or do you think it just kind of, how will it work? Who's going to join you?
Well, that's where it gets like more complicated. There's definitely some buy-in. I have lots of friends that are like, yeah, I'm into that too, but I don't believe how into it they are, because it's kind of a big commitment to live near or with someone. So I don't really know that part.
What does simple mean to you, if you don't mind telling me? Like, what does it look like?
No clutter. Kind of just surrounding myself with things that bring me joy. Lots of light and plants.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you see the property in your mind? Do you know what it looks like?
Yeah, there's lots of trees and grass and maybe like a stream going through.
So what keeps you from making this vision a reality?
I don't know how to get from like here to there. I'm really afraid of one, like permits. Like I live in Boulder County and it's just like, I feel like everything's not allowed. Like you just can't do what you want to do. So that seems really overwhelming to navigate that.
Cool, let's do a timeout here. All right, what'd you notice at the very beginning there? I heard a pretty open question that kind of would elicit a story. The next part was really powerful. This sort of confirmation, the connection, the empathy, building rapport of like, oh yeah, I've experienced that too. I relate to you. So that sense of connecting there, then followed by another really crisp, open-ended question to tell a story. So notice the difference there between the first ones, which were very leading, of, hey, would you like a house with that? To these, which are much more about, tell me a story, what's going on around your world. The other piece that was powerful in there is there was some inquiry around the functional elements of a home. There was inquiry around the social elements of a home and living, the dynamics around that. And then finally, some inquiry around the emotion of it. So what's going on at the functional surface, which those of us who are engineers, it's super easy for us to just get stuck at the functional surface level. But this one went down into the social component and then all the way down into the emotional component. So a really powerful way to traverse that, all the while building empathy, building connection, building a sense of rapport with each question. The other thing that I heard that I thought was pretty powerful was ask a question, and then Beck was completely silent. There was head nodding, there was that notion of eye contact and connection, but there was no sort of breaking in, like I'm already done with what you're saying, I'm ready, I got the next question loaded up, I'm ready to go. So give space. It's the hardest thing when you do these interviews, is to give space for the person to answer, and then give a little bit of space for awkward silence. Because in that awkward silence is often where you'll get a little extra nugget of what's going on for the person. Thank you so much for doing the role playing, really appreciate it. Yeah, there's a joke that I have a worksheet for everything, and yes, I have another worksheet here. And this is now around jobs to be done. To me, the most powerful thing to get to with your empathy interviews, distill it down into an empathy map so you can see the patterns, and then synthesize it down into a job to be done. So I've got a worksheet that goes through this. I'll explain what this worksheet is in a minute, but I want to give an example. So recently I was tasked with the job of putting handles on cabinets. So that was our cabinets, and I needed to put that thing on a cabinet, and it didn't have it on there before. Now the interesting thing about this is we were about ready to sell our house. We knew our kitchen was a little bit dated, and the belief was if we put these magic handles on our cabinets, the house will be worth so much more. So that's the challenge I was given. I'm a bit of a handy person, so I was like, oh, I can do that. So now I want to walk you through how to think about a job to be done. So for me, what progress was I trying to make? That's the first question you answer, and you try to answer it both functional, social, and emotional. So remember the interview that just happened here. Digging into not just the functional components of what's going on, but the social and emotional. So for me, I felt pressure to put a perfect hole in a hardwood cabinet to get the most value when we sell our house. So that's the progress that I was trying to make. I had the pulls, but the screws on them were a little bit odd. So the situation I was in is the hole I need is an odd sized. It was slightly bigger than the bit that I had and slightly smaller than the other bit that I had. And I have to get it right the first time. That situation was super, super important here. I have one chance to drill this hole, and if I screw it up, it materially affects the value of our house. That was the challenge. The obstacles, I didn't have the correct size drill bit. I couldn't make the exact sized hole that I needed to make. The workarounds, I could have used a slightly larger bit, and maybe it would have rolled around, not been quite snug on there. And that bit was fairly old, so I was like, I don't know if this is going to make a great hole. I mean, I could use it if I had to, but did I mention that I have to get this right the first time I drill it, and I only get one shot? And then the trade-offs, the value and the trade-offs. So the pulls were about 100 times more expensive than the drill bit that I could buy. So the cost of a new bit is inconsequential. And I could hire somebody to do the whole job for me. That's a trade-off that I could have. But the value of that perfect hole was paramount to me. So then you pull down these statements into a sentence. So for me, my job to be done was, I feel pressure to put a perfect hole in a hardwood cabinet to get the most value when we sell our house. The hole I need is an odd size. It's in really hardwood, and I have to get it right the first time. I don't have the correct size drill bit. I could use a slightly larger bit that's fairly old. And the pulls were 100 times more expensive than the drill bit, so the cost of a new bit is inconsequential to me. I could hire somebody to do the whole job for me, but I like doing it myself. So that's what I was doing when I thought about putting these these pulls on the cabinet. Then I think about the flow of money and attention going through each job here. So for me, it was more emotional currency than actual currency. I had to get it right. I didn't want to disappoint the people in my family, and I was under pressure. We got to sell our house pretty quickly. So the question here, and the key thing to pay attention to, is what job will your customers hire you to do for them? And when you figure that out, and you figure out their language around that, amazing things happen to your ability to build the product people want, and more importantly, take that product to market in an effective way.
You're naked.
So let's go on the journey here. So these solution, drill bits. So I go to the store, and I'm looking at the drill bits. Now think, what is my job to be done here? I need to not screw up putting a hole of exactly a certain size, which is kind of a goofy size, into hardwood. And now I'm shopping for the perfect bit to put that perfect hole in my cabinet. And I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, well, this has a 135-degree split point. Well, I don't know what that means. It lasts 6 times longer. I only have to drill about 30 holes. It's made out of titanium. I'm like, okay, is titanium hard metal? Where does it rank in brittle and strength? It's kind of a pretty color. Well, maybe I should pick that one. Or I could pick these. Well, it starts 10 times faster. What does that even mean? Like, do I care about how fast the bit starts? It's got all the goofy sizes I need, which is good. It's got 3 flattened shanks on it. I have no idea if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Apparently that means the chuck won't slip. What's the chuck again? I'm trying to remember. What the heck is the chuck? Do I want these? They look kind of pretty. And then I'm like, well, I could go with these and spend a little bit less money. They still have that 135-degree split point, so maybe that must be a good thing for a drill bit. I don't know exactly. And hey, these have cool black oxide coating. That must be cool. That must be valuable. So notice the amazing mismatch here between the job to be done. I need a perfect hole. I need it drilled perfectly the first time, and it's in hardwood. And all I get when I go to the store is description after description and Turbo Max. What the hell's Turbo Max? I don't even know what Turbo Max is. Like, I'm not hiring a Turbo Max. I'm hiring this to make a good hole. And none of this tells me, is this thing going to make a great hole for me? So there's a huge mismatch between how they're taking these drill bits to market and the job to be done that I have as I'm standing here trying to figure out which one of these to buy. There's a high likelihood you are doing this today to your customers. Your websites, your go-to-market is probably all it's talking about is your solution, your 135-degree split bit, your extra keyless chuck, your 10 times faster start. But none of this speaks to what I actually need. I need a great hole in a piece of hardwood. So be sure and align your go-to-market with the job to be done and the language of your customer. And the funny thing is, if one of those bits said, we drill a perfect hole guaranteed the first time in hardwood, and it was 10 times more expensive than the other bits, I would have bought it. Because the bit was a very, very small fraction of the overall cost of what I was doing. But yet, they bombarded me with all these buzzwords about how great the bit was. Now, one that was doing it right, I noticed just to the right of the drill bits are the Jigsaw Blades. So I pick up this Bosch one. It makes a clean cut in wood. Awesome. That helps me. And I love the little symbol on the back. You've got a turtle and a rabbit. Awesome. This bit cuts about medium speed, and it's good for finished wood. Finished wood's on the right, rough wood's on the left. So I know this is a medium speed bit that's going to help me cut through finished wood, nearly finished wood. Awesome. Because what do I want to do with the jigsaw bit? I want to cut a piece of wood off. This helps me understand, is this the right kind of bit for the wood that I have? And how fast is the thing going to work for me? Much more aligned with the job to be done. Much better go to market off these jigsaw. I wish the drill bits would have done the same thing. Ultimately here, though, what our goal is to go from some hunch to evidence. So as we think about all these empathy interviews, all the jobs to be done, fundamentally, you have a hunch about what's going to be successful in your business. And as fast as possible, you're trying to fill in the evidence. So tactically, what does this mean? It means starting out with a lean canvas, a business model canvas, a value proposition canvas, some description of your understanding of your business, then identifying the key obstacles, opportunities, unknowns, and risks associated with your business right now. Enumerate those out, figure out the ones that have the highest likelihood of killing you or have the highest likelihood of dramatic upside in your business, and then think about running experiments. What we talked about today was the simplest, fastest experiment you can run, which is to interview somebody. Build empathy, potentially test some of your problem statements with open-ended questions and feel what's coming back. And then ultimately that leads to evidence. Because if you're building your business solely on guesses, like right now you've got a lot of guesses and that's totally normal and fine. But to scale your business, you have to replace those guesses with evidence about what's going to work and what's not going to work. That allows you to stop doing the things that are not working and amplify the things that are working. And that's how you navigate or find your way from where you're at today to a business that's going to work. One of the ways to do this with the scientific method is run an experiment. So even when you run an experiment, a lot of times, and this comes from the lean startup movement, the build, measure, learn loop, I think it's missing a really critical piece, which is the frame step. So if you study the scientific method, the first thing you do in the scientific method is research. Well, this is human research. Build empathy. Write down your hunch or your hypothesis, and then document it. And document it can be as simple as just write it on a napkin, write it on a sticky note. The key is to write it down. Then build, run the experiment, collect the data, and then learn from the data that you received. Now, our brains are wired in such a way that makes this hard. Daniel Kahneman discovered a really fun bias called the hindsight bias. This is a great defense mechanism in our lives. So what the hindsight bias is that our brains trick us into thinking whatever happens is about what was supposed to happen. It allows us not to be surprised by everything we do in life. But this hindsight bias robs us from our ability to learn because of this. If our brains distort us around what we expect will happen to what actually happened, we don't give ourselves this chance to live in the gap between what we expect and what actually happened. And that gap between those two things is learning. So simply writing down what you think will happen gives you the chance after it happens, after you run your experiment or after you do the work, to check up and say, what's different about what I expected and what actually happened? So notice this in goal setting. We have you write down your goals. The reason we do that is so a week later you're not able to stand there and go, yeah, we did about what I expected would happen. You've got the explicit statement you made a week ago that you check up with what actually happened, and it's not for punishment, it's not to make you look silly. The reason that exists is so that you can sit here in the middle and go, what did we learn from that gap? The goal in entrepreneurship, especially at the early stages, is to maximize your learning. Learn as fast as you can, as completely as you can. So if we draw this out, this comes from knowledge theory. If you have your probability of expected result over a number of experiment runs on the bottom, and you have your ability to learn or the strength of your learning, the sweet spot, ironically, is at 50%. So half the time, you should be getting an unexpected result to maximize your learning. Now, this doesn't mean you blow something up half the time, because these have to be experiments that are safe to run. But half the time, when you hear that experiment, you get those results, you should be going, why did it go that way? And if you find over a long run of experiments that you never get the results you expect, you need to build more empathy. Your hypothesis isn't framed in a way that's even close to the reality of the situation. So build more empathy to frame a more accurate hypothesis into whatever you're trying to explore. Usually that's the case with early stage startups. With later stage startups and big companies, usually what happens is you run a bunch of experiments, you get the results you expected time and time and time again, you high-five each other and go, man, we are getting so good at running experiments. But all you're doing is wasting a bunch of time, a bunch of money with the overhead of running an experiment just to get the results you expected. You're basically wasting money proving stuff you already know. So think about more safety, to push yourself more into an environment where the results that you get will not necessarily be what you expect. This is where, when markets shift, this is the hardest thing for big companies to do. All the infrastructure of most companies is, your goal in life is to predict the future and hit it within 0.5%. That is the playbook for big companies. So if the market shifts, if a lot of uncertainty gets introduced into the marketplace, big companies aren't able to learn. Their rate of learning is down here. So please, as a startup, make sure your rate of learning is higher. And the way you do that is to push yourself for about half the time to get unexpected results. So why does all this matter? Let's kind of bring this home into why you should care about this. Pull versus push. So long ago, when we took products to market, really popularized by consumer brands in the 50s and 60s, you could push a product into market. You could spend tons of marketing money. You could saturate every place an eyeball or an ear lived, newspapers, TV, radio, and you could bombard the market with your message. You could push it onto them. And they really had no choice but accept what you pushed onto them. Is that the case today? Can you blanket your marketing budget into about 7 locations and be 100% saturated in your market? It's probably the opposite. There's probably 1 million places you could place your go-to-market dollars. And so now we're in a market environment where you have to create pull. You can't push your message onto people. You have to create excitement through understanding and language that resonates with people, imagery that resonates, and a product that resonates to get that pull from the market and people coming to you. If you find that you're trying to push your message onto people and it's not working, you probably haven't done your homework to figure out the job to be done for your customer. Do the empathy work. Do the jobs to be done definition. If you have language that resonates, people will begin pulling the product out of your hands. That's when you know you've got your go-to-market and your product well-tuned. So if you're sitting around asking yourself the question, do we have product market fit? You don't have it yet. Because you have product market fit when you don't have time to ask yourself that question. And the best way to get to product market fit early on is doing the empathy interviews and then eventually building a product and a go-to-market strategy that satisfies the job to be done for your customers. And as we think about doing these empathy interviews, again, think about the continuum of questions that we saw here. So on one side, you can ask questions that confirm your beliefs. And on the other side, you can ask questions that refute your beliefs. Empathy interviews start in that middle place, open-ended empathy. If you really want to start testing, okay, we've got a point of view that we think our customers should have. As you start testing it, it will be really, really your second nature to ask questions that confirm it. Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to buy a modular house? Right? Those are hugely confirming questions. A refuting style question is, how do you like renting? So if I'm trying to sell you a house and I ask, how do you like renting? If I get the answer back, oh yeah, it's fine. That's somebody being nice. I suddenly don't get the signal back that, oh, I'm onto something. You get the signal back that I'm not quite onto something yet. So it's a way to put your reality distortion field a little bit in check, which is as you're trying to do the final inquiry into what the real problem is here and testing go-to-market, slightly refute your point of view as you test it with customers and see what comes back. If they push back against you, that's a little bit socially awkward. And so if they're pushing back against you, it's really a problem for them. They're like, I don't care if I'm socially awkward. I don't care if I'm disagreeing with you. I have this problem and I would love for you to solve it. When you get that energy back, that's when you know you're getting closer to getting onto something with your product as well as your go-to-market messaging. So fundamentally, this is about asking, what is the problem? We're here to solve a problem or an aspiration. What is it? The question is combining empathy interviews with a sales demo and sort of how to think about folding those two worlds together. What I recommend is make it clear to the person what your intention is. And your intention at the beginning here should be, I'm not selling you anything, I'm trying to learn from you. And generally what I like to do is set that intention with them and don't cross it. So as you're doing these early interviews, create the social contract. I am here to learn about you. I'm not here to sell you anything. Because as soon as the person thinks that you're selling them something, they think, oh, well, this is pre-negotiation if I want to buy it at some point. So the blast shields go up and the person begins into this kind of preliminary negotiation stance. Now, often what can happen is if you really are onto something and you're asking these open-ended questions, people are leaning in, they're like, would you have a solution for this? Or they really get passionate about it. Then wind up, say, yeah, I'll get to that. I've got an answer for you. Let me wrap up a couple more questions because I really want to understand what's going on in your world, and then we'll shift more into what we have to offer. So create a delineation between the empathy gathering point and then the selling point. And then when you hop into selling point, like now you've got the social contract, I'm about to offer you up something or get you really excited about what we're doing, and then pop into that mode. It's partially for them, but it's also really important for you. Because as long as you mentally keep this separation that I'm not selling you right now, it's much easier to stay into the neutral part of questioning. And sometimes you need to sort of get their interest. So often too, it's like, well, do I reach out and say this is a sales call, or do I reach out and say I'm trying to learn more about you? I would encourage you to, if it's a sales call, full on, make it a sales call. If it's an empathy interview, full on, make it an empathy interview. Then if there's an opportunity to sell, tack that on at the end. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, if you're not getting the vibe that they're into what you're offering, should you stay away from sales mode? You can try sales mode at the very end, but please, whatever you do, don't try to do it in the middle. Because if you sort of step into sales mode accidentally, and then they react negatively to that, you pretty much have lost the rest of your time with empathy. So a thing that you can do is if you're sensing they're not into what you're offering, then shift the empathy interview to describing what you're offering, and then go back into empathy interview mode. Again, really curious about why they're not into this. Because again, there's power in the outliers here. So there was one time where I was doing an empathy interview for a product we were building, and we asked a bunch of open-ended questions, and they all kind of started to line up like, okay, this person should be susceptible to what we're doing. She asked, okay, what are you, what are you guys building? What are you up to? And I felt enough of the empathy interview was done, so then I shifted to describing what we were building. And she looked at me and she said, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I was like, awesome. I mean, it hurt. And I was like, okay, check that. And I was like, awesome. Why? What about this is challenging? What don't you see value in? And I went back into empathy mode and just let this person rant about how dumb this was. And in that, they're an extreme outlier, but in that we learned a ton about one little nuance of our product that I was like, oh, I didn't even think this sort of side feature thing was utterly offensive to some people. I was like, okay, well, let's not focus on that as much. So it allowed us to tune our product a little bit. So even in hate and sort of disdain for what you're up to, you can still learn a bunch. And usually the emotions are really there, so you can really lean into those emotions. Yeah, so when I think about B2b sales especially, Brad Fell sometimes uses the analogy that venture capitalists are like Dungeons and Dragons characters. There is no one common character. I think B2B sales is very similar, which is I'm always trying to figure out and go to market materials for B2B. Okay, what are the different characters you're going to encounter? Usually there's your advocate, the person that really wants you there. There's the person who can say yes. There's the person who can write the check. There's, and this is the most important one in my experience to figure out, who is the saboteur? Who is the person that's lurking in the background that's going to try to undo what you're trying to do? And it can be really powerful to build empathy for each of those characters. So certainly, you're probably initially going to be interviewing your advocate because they're the easiest person to say, hey, will you come spend 20, 30 minutes with me? But I really encourage you to the extent possible, also interview the person who can say yes, the person who can write the check. Sometimes these have to be pretty friendly organizations to get to that person. You can also do it after the fact. After you've landed a couple of customers, try to figure out why in the world did they say yes? Why in the world did they write the check? And then usually the saboteur will still be, running amok even after the company has signed the deal. So you're trying to figure out who that is, what's their motivations, what's going on behind the scenes that's causing them to do that. So in B2B, and any place also in consumer, like where your user and your customer are different people, you want to understand the motivations. You want to build empathy for both sides of that. Now, in B2B sales, often really good salespeople are just naturally good at building empathy, understanding where the customer's at, and then very quickly understanding how to navigate around navigate around the blockages and amplify the positive aspects. So you're doing that too, but this is often more focused at the product and the go-to-market level. So if you're thinking B2B, just realize you may not just be doing this with one Dungeons and Dragons character. You may have 4 or 5 you have to do this with. Yeah, so questions around, I've been kind of talking about global empathy. What if you want to learn more about particular features or aspects of a product? So when I think about this, empathy, you can zoom in the empathy. So I've kind of been telling you the framework here for early stage, where you're really trying to figure out the problem. These work in the micro as well. So you can take a feature. Let's say you're adding some add-on feature into your product. Localize the questions to just the perceived need around that feature. Again, always come at it from the need or the problem or the aspiration. It's better not to come at it from the solution. So start, okay, we think this feature is most appropriately aimed at this very specific need. So let's learn about the specific need, go into empathy mode. Then you can switch into, okay, let me show you the feature. Let me understand how you're reacting to it. So then you can kind of go into show mode. But again, come back into open-ended questions. How do you react to that? What can you imagine doing with this feature? What would this solve in your world? Tell me a story about how this feature would save you time or allow you to collaborate better, or whatever dimension you want to get a little bit more nuanced on. that help with that? Cool. Got one more. Question is around, how do we know that we're getting the helpful results from our empathy interviews? What I recommend is, so when I teach this at a university level, one of the things the class does is they'll do 50, 70 empathy interviews over the course of part of the semester. And it can be tempting to just go out and hammer all 50 at once. We pace it out. So what I recommend that you do is just kind of like in weightlifting, think of reps and sets. So you want to do 10 reps, 4 or 5 sets. So do 10 interviews with a set of questions. Step back, build the light empathy map, look at the problem worksheet or the jobs to be done, synthesize those 10 interviews that you just did, looking for patterns, but also asking yourself the question, is this interview even working? Are we even getting in the neighborhood that we want to get? Retrospect on that, what's working well, what's not working well, what do you want to change about your outreach, about the questions you're asking, about who's doing the interview. Mix that too. Remember I said 2 people doing the interview? So the other person, the person taking notes, isn't just taking notes about the person being interviewed, they're taking notes about the person conducting the interview. What could be different? What could change? You're synthesizing that down too, so that then you can look at the results of the interview as well as the meta notes around the interview, and then go out and do another 10. Refine your interview, go out, do another 10, have those come back, look at them. The other thing that you can do is switch off who's doing the interview. So think about controlling who's doing the interview. This is very often the case where often early stage CEOs can't help themselves but to be in sales mode most of the time. And usually early stage CTOs can't help themselves but want to be in front of the computer the whole time. And so if you switch those roles, it's really interesting. If you get radically different data back, then there's probably a lot of bias that's getting induced by the person doing the interview. So that's another way as you balance these multiple sets of interviews, switch off who's doing the interviews. Yeah, the question is, we're all pretty attached to our solutions. How do we know if we're asking open-ended or are we sort of unknowingly still in the trap of being very solution biased? There's a couple of things that can be powerful around that, which is you've got mentors around you. Bring your mentors in because they have more beginner's mind around what you're building. You're in a class context. Pair off with each other and review each other's empathy interviews, looking for solution bias, looking for other forms of bias in there, because you have enough awareness of what you're each doing that you can be helpful, but you also are far enough away from the solution that you can really sense, oh wow, this empathy interview is all about the solution and the bias around that. So leverage each other, leverage mentors to help you see what's going to be hard for you to see.
Okay, so let's we'll get rid of that and this. So I don't know if this resonates or not, but in the beginning of the video, he makes a reference to that bugaboo, which I call product market fit. If you have product market fit, you're going to be too busy to mess around with this stuff. So I just, if you can Google product market fit, I've been a venture capital guy. I've invested in startups over the years, and it's really the only thing that matters. If you don't have it, nothing else matters. If you haven't figured out how your business is generating revenue, and especially once you get beyond friends and family, which most new businesses kind of depend on that. To me, friend and family is great, but it's really kind of irrelevant in the bigger picture, because until you break through and show that you can generate revenue by solving problems for customers, whatever that might be, I think it's going to be a struggle. And all of the stories you read about companies both that disappear pretty quickly, and also companies like, for example, Airbnb, which we can talk a little bit about. These are all products of product market fit or service market fit. It's just the most critical thing. And I actually don't see very much about it in entrepreneurship training or graduate school. You know, they talk about accounting and all kinds of things, but really those are all tertiary. Those are secondary. I do want to take a second just, and I know I do this every once in a while, but I'm a real fan of business models. I know it sounds very geeky, but it's the truth. And business models really can inform you as to how to get to product market fit in your situation, in my opinion. Just to give you a real quick heads up on Airbnb and other businesses like that. Airbnb is what's known as a two-sided marketplace. And what that means is there are transactions where companies or people list their properties or their experiences on Airbnb. And there are also people actually renting those places. So that's two different things that are going on in the same marketplace. And what's really interesting, if you start to study two-sided marketplace a little bit, you'll see that, for example, in the various financial things that have happened, like the big problem in 2008 and 2009, various other times over the last 10, 15 years, you'll see that the two-sided marketplaces are absolutely unaffected by those kinds of things. And it's because they have lots of alternatives, lots of options. In the case of Airbnb, it might be they get into camping, or they got into experiences where, you know, people can sign up for some sort of experience, not stay somewhere. So if you look at that, it's very eye-opening, and you can see that. And in their case, you probably know the story, but it was 3 friends who graduated from design school in Rhode Island, University of Rhode Island, I believe it was, and they were living in an apartment in Los Angeles, and they were completely broke. They were all designers. They had no money, and it just so happened that a designer convention or whatever was coming to their area, and they noticed that all of the rooms for the event were sold out. So you couldn't get a room if you wanted to come to that. So one of them said, hey, why don't we just put an air mattress on the floor of the apartment and sell space on the air mattress? And thus Airbnb was born. And they actually sold 4 spots for that convention, 4 artists. One of the art or designers actually went on to become the designer of the Airbnb website, just randomly, right? So it's a very interesting story. But when you look at their history, and there have been plenty of problems, but what has not been a problem is gross revenue. The gross revenue is like a fire hose, and it's worldwide, it's everywhere. You may have some problems with this idea of renting out a house and people come and party and blow your neighborhood up. I understand all that. I'm merely focused on the actual business model. So I don't know why I'm going on and on about that, but I'm just trying to make the point that you've got to figure out how it is that you're going to get that product market fit or that service market fit. It's really critical. And until you find it, and it might take a while, you know, it's just going to be harder than once you find it. That's really the bottom line. So these types of questions that we've just been watching are really more slanted for true startups. You know, Techstars is about startups. So some of you have been in business for a while, and it may not apply in the same way. But I would argue that if you look at different market niches that perhaps you're not exploring, or you haven't explored, even if it's the same business, you'll find, like he did in his questions, you know, and when the woman said to him, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life. That's great feedback, right? That's, you know, if you can take it emotionally. I personally was raised that way. So to me, it's like, oh, good, I'm on to something. But the idea of finding that kind of feedback is well worth it. And at the same time, you don't have to go overboard and say, oh my God, this person's right and I'm wrong. maybe that person's wrong. Maybe they're full of it. You know, I'm not saying otherwise, but do keep that in mind. I do want to reiterate, John Arnold is here now, you know, that they're having their show today at 1 o'clock on Pop Shop Live. I highly recommend it. John's son Craig is the main host, does a fantastic job. I think you'll enjoy it. You'll probably buy something. I know I do every time I watch it. So, but that's okay. You know, that's the whole point, right? John, do you want to comment on your experience with Pop Shop Live at all? Yeah, any kind of thoughts about that? That you've been doing it for a while? Let me help. There we go.
No, it's really been a great additional retail source for us.
Okay.
As you know, I don't know if
Can everybody hear John? Okay. Once again, I'm in the dark. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, John.
I was going to say, primarily, 90% of our business is
I don't know what's
wholesale
going on with me.
through
But hopefully
distributors
he's helpful.
and brick and mortar shops.
All right.
But we've really concentrated this year on trying to increase our retail sales. We've done Amazon and eBay for a couple of years and do quite well with those. But the Pop Shop Live just gives you a personal touch with your customers. We've Craig's built it up to the point where we really have a good following with that. Every time he decides to do a show, people tune in and just creates some additional revenue for us. So it's worked out really good for us. So yeah, if you have time today at 1 o'clock, Craig will be on. Just pop in, say hi to him, and you'll kind of get a sense for what Pop Shop is and how it could work for you, maybe.
Fantastic, John. I appreciate it. What you need to do, somebody's asking a question, download the app, Pop Shop Live on your phone or iPad or whatever. You can also go to popshop.live, L-I-V-E, on the web, and you can also do it that way, is my understanding. But I think that what will be helpful today is watching Craig, how he kind of runs the show, the equipment he might use. You might be able to make some notes and see what he's doing, how he goes about it. One of the things that Craig does really well, in my experience, is he greets almost every single person that comes on to the show. He says, hello, how are you? Sometimes he even remembers them from previous shows. You will develop a clientele doing this, and you may actually start to know who some of these people are and remember and so forth, particularly if they've become customers and you kind of know what they're going to order. The other thing that Craig does, I think, very effectively is they offer different mixes of products, not just their products that they make, which is the key part of their business, but they also feature other purveyors. It could be other small, like a lot of you all. I know that Kime has worked with John and Craig to sell his products on there. So their business is kind of, someone's asking a question, what's their business? Kind of like a farmer's market in a way, in that they offer other products in addition to their own. But it's all part of a community. Cherry Orchards Foods is the name of it. And I just can't recommend highly enough. I've learned so much watching them and watching Craig. From a personality perspective, I think he does a really good job, connecting with the customers. And John, you guys have been doing this for what, at least a couple of years? Is that right? I think that's right.
Only about a year.
Okay, about a year.
We started off with a company called Comments Sold, which
Right.
is very similar.
Yep.
We didn't find their platform to be quite as user friendly, and so we switched to Pop Shop Live, and it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah. So one of the things, just kind of in response to that, is there are a number of players out there that are really technology platforms, and Comments Sold is one of them. So Comments Sold doesn't really build an audience. They're just selling technology is what they're trying to do. Pop Shop Live is a little bit different in that they're not selling technology. They're actually on the hook with you in terms of they've got to get a sale before they make any money at all. And they have an audience. I don't know how many, they won't tell me how big their audience is, but it's significant. So, and there are other players out there that have a built-in audience. So the problem with all of that is that built-in audience may not connect with you and your business. It just may be a little odd or whatever, and that's okay. One of the things that we will learn about is the idea of streaming to multiple locations, which we can get to. That's a little bit more complicated, but when you find out where your quote tribe is, your people, that will help you figure out. And in the case of John and Craig, it's been a year or so. They have found an audience on Pop Shop Live enough that it's worth them doing this on a regular basis. And then also, I think others who have worked with them from our class, like Time I mentioned, I know Time has, it's worked out well. It makes sense and so forth. So I appreciate John. That's very, very helpful. And I think anybody have any questions or anything they want to go further on with that?
I do. I got a question. So how do they actually, I mean, I've done the Pop Shop just a little bit, just looking at it. How do they actually find you? So like when I'm in there and I'm searching now, I'm trying to find Cherry Orchid and stuff. So, I mean, do you search by the product you're interested in, or?
I don't know. I think you put a search in for Cherry Orchard Foods, you should find it, I would assume.
Yeah, if you search the company, it should pop up for you, Cherry Orchard Foods.
But say I was in there. So like, are you promoting it on social media to say, hey, watch me, I'm gonna be on Pop Shop Live? I mean, are you getting like local customers? Or are you actually getting customers that are just finding you through Pop Shop? Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
For me, or I just Googled to see who else was up, or just went in Pop Shop and said, okay, well, who else is doing spices? Well, I put spices as the keyword and couldn't find anything. So I was trying to kind of figure out what they were doing, what could I do differently? So how would you? I mean, I'm trying to wrap my mind around.
Let me jump in here, John, real quick. So just to, because I think you have several questions going there. The first question you asked, John, was, is he selling to local people or is he getting people from Pop Shop? So let's start with that, John. We'll go on to the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very, very little. You'll find very little of it will be local. It's people that patronize Pop Shop Live in general, and they'll see that you're promoting an upcoming show, and they say, oh, they've got food, like gourmet food items. That looks good to me. So they'll tune in for the show. And typically most of our customers, I mean, they're from all over the United States. We ship to Alaska, Hawaii, a lot to California for some reason, New York State, Florida, all of that. So they just tune in from everywhere. Very little of it's local. Most of our local sales come through retail shops here in the Triad area, but not through Pop Shop Live.
Okay,
So
let me
try. And I'm following
hold on
you.
a second, Don. Hold on 1 second. I want to stay on this track just for a second longer. So the other thing for you to think about is, and this may not be something that John and Craig do, but I know that Ashley Nolan from Copper Ashes and others promote the heck out of their show on their own social media, because what happens is you may have customers that find that convenient, right? They may say, oh, great, I can, even though I'm already a customer or I go to her website or whatever, they might say, wow, there's stuff on here that's different than the website, different bundles. You might have a guest where maybe you have somebody who grows spice somewhere and they're your guest and they talk about growing the spice. So it's important to use that that infinite thought process that we've been talking about, this idea of, we don't have all the answers in advance. We don't know. John and Craig have been on Pop Shop and have experienced really exposure nationally. And you can have the same thing, or you can also promote the heck out of it in your channels and get people to go there. I think that just to give you one example, there is a company on there I hope I have the name right. I think they're called LA Express. That's on Pop Shop Live, and I believe it's their first merchant, or certainly one of their first. And I think this is probably not 100% correct, but the point is, they had 5 retail stores in the Los Angeles area. They closed them all and built a 5,000 square foot warehouse with a video studio in there. And now this is all they do. And their sales are 10 times more than when they had the 5 retail stores. Okay, so that's just an example, and I'm sure there are plenty others. I haven't kept up with all of that as much as I did before, but
You
this
say the
is
name of that business again?
LA Express. I
Thank
think
you.
it's right.
Thank you.
And you won't believe what they sell. They sell anime related products and snacks. They sell Japanese snacks like you wouldn't believe. So it's just weird, you know. Again, you just don't know what someone's going to come up with. Anyone else want to comment? Dawn, I didn't mean to cut you off. You still have more?
No,
Yeah, we're-
that's
I-
fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with searching by the company name. So I was able to just follow a few people that I knew were on there.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And what
And-
what happens when people do find you, if they like what you're doing, they can like you and follow you, and that way the next time you advertise a show, they automatically get an alert that you've got a show coming up. So that's how you build your audience.
And how often do you do your show?
We haven't been real consistent because this is getting into a really busy time of year for us with our wholesale distributors. But he's been trying to do one at least every other week, and we play with different times. We're finding out that you can do it just about any time of the day. You can pop in and do it for a half hour during the afternoon, which will be morning time for your California people, where you can do it in the evening. A lot of people work in front of a computer, so they can be at work and still tune in to you, which is on their telephone, on their iPhone. So works pretty good.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think.
This is
Go ahead, Ruth, please.
just a question for John. So I find the advertising bit tricky. Are you advertising through Pop Shop or other channels? How are you getting people to know you're there, or is it just repetition?
Just really for us, it's just been repetition through Pop Shop Live. What do we have now, Craig? About 500 followers. He has about 500 followers, which is probably really small in comparison to some of the other Pop Shop Live people. But if you have 500 people that are being notified each time you go live, you're bound to pick up, quite a few of them that are going to tune in. So, and it just goes from there, word of mouth advertising between those people. We really haven't promoted it much at all. Like I said, it's not our main source of revenue. So our wholesale business is the key to that. So I don't think I really answered your question, Ruth, but
No, you did. You did.
I was just going to chime in. I've done it once. And when I was doing my research, I was doing it late at night. I was in my PJs. I had no makeup on. I was just randomly going through and seeing who was going. And I made a connection with this guy, and he was like, "Hey, Cottage Lane, what do you sell? Why don't you come on?" And the next thing you know, I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm on this guy's show." And it was really nice because he was really sweet and welcoming. And then I got some followers from him, like introducing the products, and he's become a fan. So it's a very sort of it's can be very it's community oriented. So if you just are like try to just people want to support each other on the app, the sellers as well as finding your buyers.
absolutely.
So I was like, wow, this is such a great introduction. I've only done it once, and also the other thing that the gentleman advised is do it for more than an hour. And because people come and go all the time, people will just pop in and pop out. So it's not like they're going to be watching your whole show. And you'll see people popping in and out. And I actually lost my voice because it was just me for 2 hours. And my throat was on fire the next day because I was filling that space.
You're exactly right.
So you have to pace yourself as
you,
well.
And you will find a lot of other sellers will tune in and support you and see what you're doing. It's just like Dennis had mentioned, Khan, we try to support his products. He supports our products on his show. So, you know, it just goes hand in hand, like you say, a community.
Yeah, I think one point that I think is important to keep in mind, you know, when you're in the middle of the forest, all you can see is the trees. And what I mean by that is we have been, you know, really trained, if you will, in e-commerce by people like Amazon and other big organizations. And our experiences have been, you know, basically we're shopping in a giant catalog, right? We're searching through, you hear the term keyword and SEO and all this kind of stuff. All of this is oriented to try to find stuff to buy in a really consumer unfriendly way, if you really think about it. You know, back when I was younger, you know, catalogs was a really big deal, and you get it in the mail and you'd look at the catalogs, usually particularly for higher end items. It was always aspirational, beautiful pictures, beautiful models, or whatever. It wasn't price oriented, you know, necessarily. And then now I think a lot of this stuff has become almost commodity or you know, just, I don't know. It kind of removes a lot of that sort of branding. Well, what this live video does, and one of the things that is true about this is the percentage conversion rate on your video is dramatically higher than any other place that you sell. It doesn't mean you have enough people in your live show. You need a lot more. But just think about this for a minute. If I went to a venture capital guy with my e-commerce business and I told them that I had a 3 to 5% conversion rate of sales to visitors to my website, they literally would ask me no other questions. They would just write a check. That's how impressive that number is. That number is actually a little bit better than what Amazon does as a company, just to give you an idea. The percentage of buyers from live video are more in the magic order of 20, 25%, meaning 25% of the people who come to your live show are likely to buy. And that is just a dramatic difference. I mean, there's just no comparison, right? And if you're not venture capital funded, where you can just keep on buying ads for an unlimited amount of time, why wouldn't you do the live video? It just makes common sense, you know, that you would expose your brand, even if they don't buy right away because you haven't quite got the price right or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's really a numbers game, and this really gets the numbers in your favor. And it's not talked about very much. People just say, you know, either positive or negative things about it. To me, the most important thing is the conversion rate is off the hook. I mean, it really is a whole different level. And the more you go, and you know, the idea of sitting behind in front of a camera, I realize is not super appealing. But in China, there is in fact a normal process for companies that go live on live streaming. You know, 8 hours a day is pretty normal. That's just like any other business in the old days where you went down to your shop and opened it up, and maybe it was even more than 8 hours, right? So this is no different. And the other thing is the video gives you the opportunity to be unique and unable for anyone to compete with you, because who you are and your story and your connection, you can't compete with that. There's no way Amazon can do that. All they can do is put up thousands of products in a catalog that you have to figure out how to find stuff. So you're in a very unique and powerful position because this is new. And it's intimidating and it sounds crazy to go live, but it's really not that big a deal. And the truth is, many of you will find a real performance increase in terms of conversions. And that's really what's driving my whole interest in all of this, is ways for you all to generate revenue, even though you don't have millions of dollars to spend on marketing and et cetera. So John and Craig are pioneers, and like I said earlier, they've been through it, but each of you will have a different experience and a different zeitgeist, or whatever the right word is, of your kind of story, your tribe, if you will. We've had some funny things happen in some of these live shows. We have a guy who grows butter beans in Goldsboro, and he got his son to be his host, and the son is trying to do the show, and he kept sticking his head in sideways in front of the camera and trying to sell. He started telling stories about how he made his moonshine jelly. It was just hysterical. I thought it was out of control. But no one can compete with that. If you connect with that guy and his son, that you're connected. It had nothing to do with websites or anything. So I'll get off my soapbox. But anyone else?
Yeah, I do. As far as promotion, and when you said promote the hell out of it, how do you go about doing that? When you think of promotion and you think of advertising without funding, what's your recommended, your recommended thing for that?
Sign up for a free Buffer account, Buffer. It allows you to post to your social media for free. I think the free version allows you to post to 3 different social media at once and control it and schedule it. So you can build your creative, whether it's a short video or an ad or whatever, and you can start posting that to your social media. And that's a starting point. You can also partner with people. You can partner with maybe some other people in the class. You could have some sort of event, that you could promote. Could be a holiday, could be anything. If you look around the internet or you look at your email, you'll see lots of ideas of how people partner, how they do stuff together. But really, that's what I would recommend. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I would just add also your email list. I would definitely do your email list and any associations that you're involved with. And also there is a way that you can promote it on Pop Shop. So you make a little preview reel. They suggest that you have it done at least a week in advance so that you can shop that around as well and say, this is my preview of what the show's going to be about. And I was going to say, for anybody who's interested, the onboarding was a little bit less than smooth for me. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but it does take some time to get a hold of the right person and to find the right person, because they do have to physically onboard you. I don't know how this Got to Be is going to be. If you do it through that's going to be a lot faster and speedier. But if you're doing it on your own, if you're doing it on your own and you're not doing that show, and the guy, he was really cool. He was very, very sweet. And he can answer any of your questions. I think his name was Mike, who I onboarded with. But you do have a one-to-one and you can ask any questions. And I think we talked for about half an hour. And it was pretty self-explanatory. But just, as helpful if people are really interested in doing it.
We have 10 or 11 short videos that they gave us for onboarding that I'll make available to you all. So you can go through those and it'll answer a lot of your questions. And I said to figure out where to put them so you can access them easily. But they've got a whole, compared to when we did it last year, it's much more organized and much more, easier to follow. So, all right, well, I'm rambling on into the lunchtime here. Anybody else? Yeah.
Sorry, it's Gail. Can I ask you to just go over what you said about Buffer again and advertising? Is that a website that you go to register?
Buffer is an app / website that posts to social media. That's their business. So it's buffer.app. I put it in the chat. And you can check it out. It just enables you for free to post to Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. And then they have a paid version where you can do more. You can post to more social media. I just have the free version, and you create your content and you use this tool to schedule the posts and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I use. There are other tools out there. I believe Canva has that now. I think Canva has a social media posting functionality. I think I saw that the other day. So yeah, so it's just the idea of getting out of the manual process of doing them one by one and setting up groups, set up campaigns. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I tried it. It's buffer.com.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I guess the app is buffer.app.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, I've been using that for years, and it works really well. For free, I think. I don't know how the hell they do it for free, but they do. So, more power to them, I say. You don't get rich being free, but you get popular. All right. Anything else? Okay. So Monday is going to be a lot of fun. I hope that you all agree. We're gonna. Some of you might remember last time, but we're gonna go through listening to a woman named Mary who has a farm called Five Marys Farm, and her 4 kids are also named Mary, Mary Beth, Mary whatever. They're not all Mary, Mary, Mary. At least, I hope not. But this woman is a cattle grass-fed beef seller up from the border of Oregon and California. And it's insane what she has done in the last 4 or 5 years. I think you all will enjoy it. Her methodology. This particular video is a lot about how to use social media to build your brand. She only has about 280,000 followers on Instagram, not that many. But it's pretty crazy, the success they've had. At one point, FedEx was going to add a runway to their local airport because they had to pick up so many packages from her. They were just going to fly their cargo jet into this little town. But I guess they couldn't make the runway long enough or whatever. So it's pretty interesting. So that will be on Monday. I hope you all get a chance to tune.
Will you recording that, Dennis, on Monday?
I record everything. I try to, right, Grant?
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, we try. All
Will you
right.
be sending an email for that meeting, just like you have for this week?
Yep, you get an email the morning of every day, or is it the night? I can't remember. Grant sends out an email.
It's the night
What is that?
before.
Night before, yeah.
Yep, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, make sure Kimberly is on that list. We have a little bit of a problem with our list. We're not as organized as maybe we'd like to be. But so if you're not getting emails, just let me know, and we'll add you to the spam attack robot that we use to send out emails. So
Have you not been getting emails, Kimberly?
Yes, I've gotten them all this week. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure I was getting those because I can't remember what I've signed up for.
We don't care. We just keep going. Whether you sign up or not, it doesn't matter.
Sounds good to me.
We just keep on trucking, keep on throwing stuff. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Sorry I went so long today, but appreciate everybody. And John, good luck with your show today. I'll be tuning in. I have to go to some boring thing all afternoon, but I'll bring my headphones and I'll sneakily look at your show while I'm sitting there. So thanks everybody. Take care.